Drew, I cannot wait for the day that we can finally get rid of these chairs.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot help but slouch in these chairs. And I've noticed with guests too.
They've been, I've seen this on the footage too.
Yeah, they're on the struggle bus when they come in. Gives us a bad reputation.
Well, I have to use this pillow because my legs are so short too. If I don't, my legs stick out.
Yeah, we got to fix this. We are going to fix it soon.
Oh.
Stay tuned. Things are going to change around here.
Foreshadowing.
It's the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck podcast with your host, Mark Manson.
What are we talking about today?
Oh, Mark, we're giving a huge fuck this week about our own industry and what we do. The self-help word. When self-help is not helpful. I think that's the tagline I came up with. Is that a good tagline? I don't know.
That's pretty good.
It's not too bad.
That's pretty good.
There was, it's about 12 years, more than 12 years ago now. Back in 2012, he wrote this article called 5 Problems with the Self-Help Industry. And came up with these 5 points about, what's wrong with your own industry that you're kind of self-critiquing it, and maybe even some of the stuff we do.
It's interesting because in 2012, I was like the feisty upstart that nobody had heard of. And I'm like sticking the middle finger to every, all the big established people in the industry. And now I am one of those big established. So I'm very curious to actually go through these, see if I still agree with them.
Maybe turn the spotlight on ourselves a little bit here throughout all of this. I don't know.
Is this going to be our, what's it called when you like, there's a word for it where you like audit yourself. Am I making, never mind.
You might be making this. I have no idea. I don't know. We're self-owning ourselves. I don't know.
Isn't there like a process like in Catholicism or something where you like a catechism?
Oh, is that what that means? I've never known what that word means.
It's like where you like audit yourself and like you like admit to all of your faults,
like your confessions and that you do. But there's like a whole process around it.
See, I wasn't imagining things.
It's something like that. I don't know. Well, I mean, and the way you start this article out, though, it is a little bit like that, where it's the self-help industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Still true.
Yep.
Fills up bookstores and conference rooms. Still true. It's made media celebrities out of people and capitalized wildly off the growing self-consciousness of recent generations.
Still true.
Still true. And all those changed millions of lives of people, mostly for the better. It still lacks a certain credibility.
Still true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be, is it snake oil? Is it, there's a lot of that going on.
There's some of that. Yeah.
A lot of people think it's just kind of a laughing stock of an industry, which,
Can't blame them for that.
They can't blame them for that either. So you introduced these 5 ideas throughout this of like kind of 5 problems that you've seen. And I want to see how much you think these still hold up. I think most of them still do. And maybe if you'd have any changes, maybe additions.
Yes.
Maybe turn them on ourselves a little bit too.
Sure.
Critique ourselves. And we can jump right into it if you're ready.
Let's do it.
All right, the first one is self-help reinforces perceptions of inferiority and shame. To kind of set that up, we've talked about this on the podcast before too, though. There's what you call the bad to okay and the okay to great people that come to self-help. Lay that out for us first, I think, and then
I think what a lot of people miss is that self-help is secretly 2 different industries, right? So I've always thought of it as 2 classifications. So there's like people who are in a really bad place in their life and they're really struggling and suffering and they just want to feel okay again. It's just like, just make the pain go away. And then there are people who their life's okay, but they're kind of like things are stagnant or they feel like they're missing out on something or things could be better or they're not, living up to their potential. And I call those the okay to great people, right? It's like, my life's fine, but I really would love to be doing something amazing that I'm excited about, right? And those 2 groups, those 2 cohorts of people often get completely mixed up and treated the same way, which is from, I guess, an intervention point of view, horrible. Like, for example, somebody who's in the okay to great camp, it might be good to be hard on them. It might be good to be like, you know what, like, pick your ass up, get your shit together. Like, stop being such a lazy asshole. And, you deserve more than this, blah, blah, blah. If you take somebody who's like very deep in depression and has struggled with mental health issues for many, many years, and you say that same thing, like you might push them over the edge, right? So the messaging is actually very different between those 2 groups. The goal is very different between those 2 groups, but because the same kind of marketing appeals to those 2 groups, they often get lumped together in audiences and customer bases. And so for a long time, I've always felt just a lot of mixed feelings over just the responsibility that quote unquote gurus or thought leaders in this space have to recognize the sensitivities that come with the bad to okay group. Like you have to treat them differently. You can't. There's no one size fits all.
Right, and the point you were making in this section about the industry reinforcing perceptions of shame and guilt,
yes,
are really pertinent for that okay or the bad to okay people.
Yes,
because like you read a book on happiness or something like that. I think this is an example you gave in the article. Actually, read a book on happiness. The good or the okay to great people are like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do this, cool. But the bad to okay people are like, well, shit, these are all the things I'm not doing right, and I'm a loser, and I can't wrap my head around this even, and I just may as well give up, and I'm a piece of shit.
I think the simplest way to sum it up is that you can, an okay to great person, you can tell them that they're fucking up, and that'll probably create a good result, right? Because they want to hear that. They want to know what they're doing wrong. They want to know what they could be doing better because they have a baseline self-esteem and self-worth that they can handle it, right? Whereas if you tell a bad to okay person that they're fucking up, that's part of the reason they're in such a hole is like they feel guilt and shame and just absolutely awful about themselves because they feel like they've wasted their life. And so if you show up and start saying, well, you know what, you're fucking all this up because you should be doing this and that and the other thing. And like, they're just going to hear that as like a validation of what they already feel about themselves. The worst problem about that is that it's those bad to okay people that tend to, like, let's say one of these people who's like in a very, very dark place goes to a generic self-help seminar, right? And starts hearing these messages. And obviously it makes them feel worse. That person, the nature of being a person in that dark spot is that you think you're at fault for everything, right? So it's like, if they go to the seminar and the guru is giving all this advice and that advice isn't working and it's making them feel worse, their assumption isn't going to be, oh, this guru sucks, I should go somewhere else. Their assumption is going to be, wow, I really am a loser. Even this self-help seminar is not fixing me, right? Like, because that's just how their brain works. That's where their mind is at that moment. It makes me feel icky.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there's also a risk of developing kind of like a codependent relationship there too?
Yes.
Like you're especially with those bad okay people, they're going to develop this kind of codependency with a figure or guru or whoever.
Right. Absolutely. And it's especially because it's like, okay, let's say you've nothing's worked and then you go to this seminar and that seminar makes you feel good for the first time in 5 years, right? And then you leave the seminar and you start feeling bad again, which is usually what happens. It's logical that you start assuming like, well, okay, this guy's got the answer. I need to follow him everywhere and do all the stuff and sign up for all the things and spend all my savings because it's like, this is the only thing that's working. And it's part of, I think this is the thing that the general population intuits about self-help that makes them squirm a little bit, which is that the best customers tend to be the most hopeless people. So a lot of marketing gets optimized to take advantage of those people, and a lot of the money comes from those people. And so it feels really gross. Right. And in my business and our business, like I've always been very careful of like making sure the messaging is like clear, like differentiates between those two groups within a single piece of content, whether it's an article or a book, just making sure it's, hey, I'm addressing the okay to great people now. Okay, now if you're like in a really dark place, this is different. So I'm going to address that now. But also I don't think I'm qualified or credentialed to be dealing with bad to okay people for the most part, right? So I get emails all the time from people who are deeply depressed, suicidal, have like a pretty severe anxiety disorders, right? And it's like, my response is, you need to go find a professional. Yeah. Like, I'm just a guy with a podcast, So like, if you want to like figure out how to be 10% more effective in your career or your relationship, like I'm your guy. If you want to know how to get over a breakup, like, yeah, I got tips for you. If you are so depressed you can't get out of bed, you should probably go talk to somebody more serious than I am.
That said, there's been, probably dozens of people over the years who have come to you and said, hey, I was actually thinking about killing myself or, harming myself in some way. And it does help. So they can break through sometimes, but that's the exception and not the rule. And I get that.
You can't, plan on that.
No. Yeah. I can't bank on that for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get to kind of what we can maybe do about that in another step here. We'll keep moving through this. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Oh, okay.
Not really.
Okay.
Kind of. The next one, though, you said self-help is often yet another form of avoidance. This one is near and dear to my heart. So, yeah.
Well, what I've noticed is that a lot of self-help content is subtly specialized to make you feel as though you are having a transformation rather than actually having a transformation.
Infotainment, yeah.
Yes. It's exactly. It's kind of like, it's like the cable news of growth. It's like you watch cable news, you feel like you're being informed, but you're actually not being informed. It's like a lot of self-help. You feel like you're growing, but you're not growing. You're like literally doing all the same things and making the same mistakes you always made. So, and what I notice is that there are some people that actually get kind of hooked on that feeling of transformation because they always feel like it's just around the corner. It's the next step. Like, I'm a new person. Oh my God, I did this other thing and now I'm a new person again. And it's meanwhile their life's still a mess and they're taking no responsibility and they can't figure any of their shit out. So there's a lot of that goes on. And I do think some of that kind of addictive quality to the feeling of transformation is another, like any addiction it's a way to avoid the discomfort of actually confronting your own issues.
Right.
Why does this bug you so much?
Well, I think one of my just kind of like core values in life for whatever reason, almost didn't even choose it myself, is learning. And just like I like psychology and I like human behavior and I like learning about myself. And you just get caught in that. I just like to learn, and there's a lot of information in this space. So you can learn until you can not do anything but learn. Yeah. And that's what's bothered me so much about it. I think it's just, I get too much in my head. I've talked about this before. I over intellectualize everything. Analysis paralysis kicks in at that point too, where you have all this information, you don't even know where to start. And so I would agree that the industry itself, especially around, there's so many books and just content that you can passively absorb that without taking any action. And so, that's been my problem.
Learning is a smart person's favorite way to procrastinate.
100%. Yeah.
That's what I've found.
That hits home.
And it's funny because I honestly think most of these problems are actually they're intellectually simple. They're just emotionally very difficult. Right. And so I think the tendency is that when something feels emotionally difficult, we assume that it must be intellectually complicated. And so we set ourselves like, okay, I need to like buy a couple books about this. And, maybe I should watch this lecture on YouTube to like really understand this and take notes and like journal for a few weeks. And before I can like know exactly how to break up with my girlfriend or whatever, right? And it's like, no, you just fucking break up with your girlfriend. Right. Like it's not going to make it any easier.
But that's the avoidance you're talking about here, which is the emotional avoidance. And you do that through intellectualizing all this content or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. I will say for my over-intellectualizing brain, what helped was just realizing that experience and action is the best teacher. If you want to learn? Oh, okay. You're motivated to learn? Then get your ass off the couch and go do something. Right. So I don't know. That helped me anyway. So yeah. Okay. Speaking of, you've already mentioned marketing.
Yep.
Once. In this next point, you say self-help marketing creates unrealistic expectations. I think that's been driven home. Most people know that by now.
Yes.
But what were some of those back then and now that you see the over-promising, under-delivering?
There's a short version of this, which I think most people kind of implicitly understand, which is it's just the magic bullet marketing, right? Like it's this idea that you can go to a seminar or read a book and, a light bulb's going to go off and everything's going to change overnight. Like that is so intensely rare of an experience. Yet that I think most consumers in this market assume that that's the baseline. And I think there's a lot of self-delusion that people try to go through to convince themselves that has happened. I talked earlier about how people will, go do all this stuff and go to retreats and seminars and do all these new practices and stuff and claim they're a new person. And then meanwhile, it's like they're still unemployed, their relationships falling apart, they're broke, like they still have terrible habits. Like nothing of substance has changed. It's like all of the fun, sexy stuff is changing. in my experience, and this is very much reflected in the literature, or psychological literature and behavioral, like the literature around behavioral change, is that the vast majority of change is small, tiny iterations over a long period of time.
Boring.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like adding one little thing every couple weeks that like nobody's going to notice, and you might not even notice the benefits. But it's like once you do like 8 or 10 of those things over a long period of time, you suddenly look back and you're like, oh, wow, I'm actually a very different person than I was a year ago or 6 months ago, you know?
But you certainly can't write a marketing campaign for that. And you certainly can't cram that into a weekend and charge $5,000 for that. Right?
Exactly. Like an honest pitch in self-help would be like, try these 17 small iterative changes over a long period of time to maybe be able to perceive a significant growth in your life, you know? And it's like
Mark Manson, the next book right there. There it is.
That's the title. And you probably put an asterisk there with a bunch of fine print, like clarifying like what change means, what growth means, what iteration means. So like that's the honest truth. And it's not a sexy message. I mean, I will say again that the biggest thing I can say since that I wrote that article is like things have gotten much better. You know, all the bullshit is still there. It's still very prevalent. There's still a bunch of like really shady, creepy people in this industry. There still are absolutely like frauds and charlatans making a lot of money. But the science-based side of the industry, the evidence-based side of the industry, the realistic side of the industry, has grown substantially. And I do see that message of just like consistent, small, unsexy things is actually what moves the needle. That is becoming more prevalent.
Yeah, there's at least a market for that now.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
For sure, which is good. I would agree with that too.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to keep moving here. You mentioned this one a little bit already too. Self-help is usually not scientifically validated. So just coming right off of that.
Yeah.
You noted that most of the self-help practices, especially back then, and I would say in the 90s, 2000s was the case, they just weren't backed by scientific evidence. There was some evidence coming out around then about like meditation, journaling. That was kind of starting back then. It was like, these things are actually helpful. Gratitude practices, stuff like that. There was some of that. And I think that has come online a little bit more, as long as you're not using it as a form of avoidance. But
right.
Yeah. What's your take on that now?
Again, I think it's gotten a lot better. What's interesting about all that stuff, you know, you mentioned meditation and journaling, like both of those kind of had their heyday of like, you know, all these studies came out. It's like, oh my God, this is like the big new thing. Everybody should be doing this. And of course you see that effect as more people start doing it, the milder the benefits become. Right. And I guess one thing that like I don't know if I've changed my views on this, but it's more like my views have evolved on this, which is that, most things work a little bit.
Yeah.
Nothing works completely. And the things that work for each individual are going to be completely different. And so really like if you approach this industry or this project of improving your self-improvement, really like the right framework you should be working from is just treating everything as like an endless series of small experiments, right? I'm going to try journaling every morning for 30 days and I'm going to see, and I'm just going to note like if I feel better, if I don't feel better, if it's useful, if it doesn't feel useful. Everybody's mileage is going to vary. Like me personally, I've messed with journaling on and off, you know, my entire adulthood. I discovered relatively early that like I'm what I call a crisis journaler. So I don't journal every day. I journal when shit hits the fan.
Okay.
You know, it's like when something is like a huge mess in my life or something is like I have a really stressful problem that I need to work through. I journal shit out of my,
you go right to the blank page,
my notebook.
Huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll go through like 10 pages in my journal, but then it'll sit there for 8 months and not be touched. And I've just found that like, that's what works for me. And I think if more people understood how, I don't want to say flimsy the research is, but like how mild the effects sizes are in most of the research and most of the interventions, they would probably take that approach as well. Like just understanding that like even the tried and true things like therapy and like pharmaceutical interventions, like even those like don't have massive hit rates, right? Even those, like people's mileage varies drastically from person to person. So it's like, take everything as a small experiment, be very conscious of like, I'm going to do this for X amount of days or X weeks, and I'm going to see how I feel at the end compared to the beginning. And I'm going to try to be really honest with myself of like, is this moving the needle at all? Is this worth it? Am I going to keep doing it? And like, and if not, that's fine. That's still information. Like you didn't lose anything. If you journal for 30 days and it didn't do anything for you, that's not a loss. That's still a win, because now you know that that's just not a thing that works for you. So you go try something else.
Yeah. And I think over the last like decade or so too, you and I have both, we've seen the replication crisis in psychology, especially. And at first I was very disillusioned by that. I was like, oh no, this like the whole field's in trouble. But when if you step back and you think about it, I'm not giving up on the scientific project here at all, because that's how it goes. It's just a long time. And then when you try to apply that to an individual life, right? That's a shorter time span we need to deal with. Totally. Whereas the arc of scientific discovery is much longer, and we have to still believe in that, I think, just on principle. But it's like you're saying, take it with a grain of salt. Be a skeptic in your own mind. Be a scientist in your own mind. Be like, well, let's see if this works for me.
Totally.
So I arrive at the same place that you do.
And just to give context for listeners who aren't aware, like the replication crisis it's happened in most of the social sciences, but basically it's somewhere around 60%. You know, when they run a psychological study, it's usually with a bunch of college students in the US. And at some point around 10, 15 years ago, they started taking some of these common psychological experiments and running them in like, you know, Indonesia and the Amazon rainforest,
or sometimes in the U.S. again,
or sometimes in the U.S. again, and they find that it doesn't replicate. Right. Like you get totally different results, and so there's been roughly around 60% of what was considered like scientifically true in psychology does not replicate, and so it's actually been called into question. And so I would just say this: like if you've read a lot of science-based books on like happiness and motivation and improving your life that were written, say, in the 2000s to early 2010s, there's a good chance that a lot of that does not hold up. So
So being a scientist on a personal level, though, good. That's good. Experiment on your own. That's where I end up with that too. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, last one. Self-help is a contradiction. And this goes back to the bad to okay and okay to great people. You say that the fundamental project of improvement is self-acceptance. And that you can't get that by definition, you can't get that externally. Yeah. Right. And so self-help ends up being the most useful for the people who need it the least. You've kind of already mentioned this a little bit. What does someone do if they are in that, like you said, you know, of course, therapy and all of those kind of things too, but what's the project? Is that the project, I guess, is if you're bad to okay, if you're in a really bad spot, just getting yourself to the point where, you could use these things.
This is the only one I don't know if I stand by this anymore. I think it's interesting hearing this 12 years later in my 40s. That one, I think the first four are totally legitimate, especially for the time. That one kind of sounds like a guy in his 20s trying to sound really smart. Okay. It's not that he's wrong, but it's just like, I think it's overstating the case a little bit. Like, it's true. The goal is to achieve a level of self-acceptance, but like, you're not going to get there overnight. And I do think there are a lot of things that you can do to help guide people in that direction, or like help teach them the tools to develop that in themselves without demeaning them, without like robbing them of their agency, or preventing them from taking responsibility for themselves. There is a lot of stuff in the self-help industry that does those things to people, but there's a lot of healthy ways to go about it as well. So yeah, I think that's overstated. Okay. I think there is a healthy path to help people get to a place of self-acceptance. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, overall, I'm optimistic. Like I am.
We're still here. I mean, we're still here. We're still doing this. So
still doing it. I mean, the industry is bigger than it's ever been. Yeah. And the demand, I mean, what's interesting is that it really has become mainstream. And it's almost like, the same way people listen to sports and weather and read the news headlines for the day, they've got their little inspiration practice or the person they listen to or the, whatever Facebook account they follow.
I used to kind of hide my self-help books. I would, kind of bury them. Now they're up on my bookshelf.
Yeah,
whatever. I mean, obviously they are, but yeah. That's changed a lot. Yeah.
Cool.
Which is good.
Yeah. All right. We'll be right back. And we're back. What are we calling bullshit on today, Drew?
Oh, brilliant bullshit this week, Mark. Minimalism. Near and dear to our hearts.
We really are digging into the old Manson archive, aren't we?
This one, it's like kind of, this one I've thought a lot about. I mean, you and I, we'll get into our stories, I think, a little bit here, but we should
define minimalism first for people who have not heard of it.
We'll define minimalism. The core premise of minimalism, let's just say, is owning fewer things will create less stress and more freedom in your life.
Yes.
Right? Okay. I think even you wrote an article about this. I think it was in 2012 as well. So it's been 12, 13 years. All right.
Yeah.
So
it's a strong Manson year.
Yeah. And there was still a very kind of in the zeitgeist, Fight Club was still out, right? Like the things you own still ended up owning you, that famous line from Chuck. And you and I both were at one point in our lives very staunch minimalists. We no longer are.
Right.
So maybe we can go through your experience with it first, and I can pepper in mine as well, and what you learned from that.
Well, just to zoom out,
I
really, in hindsight, I really do think minimalism was kind of a cultural trend that probably it was probably some combination of two things. One is I think our generation grew up, like, I don't know about you, but like our parents, our generation's parents, it was all about the beautiful house and the white picket fence and
McMansion,
and like going to the mall and getting all the shit on sale and having all these like beautiful things, outside and around, and the garages got boxes piled, to the ceiling with extra stuff. And I grew up around that. I was like a little bit disillusioned by it. Thought it was a little bit ridiculous. Like just growing up with the amount of consumerism that we grew up with, I think there was kind of a natural propensity to rebel once we hit young adulthood. So I think that was a huge part of the trend. I also think part of it was the great financial crisis. You basically had this generation of 20-year-olds who A, had no money or possessions already, and then B, had no immediate opportunities for financial advancement. And so of course they like come together and create a owning nothing as a status symbol.
Right.
It kind of makes sense. Maybe that's a cynical way to look at it, but at that time in my life, I was living as a nomad. I was young, self-employed, worked off my laptop. I didn't really need a whole lot.
Right.
Like to be happy, I really just needed some clothes, my computer, an internet connection, and that was kind of it.
Yeah, a few bucks to buy beers here and there, and
exactly. So it was an easy. Again, this is not to like discount it as a philosophy, and I do think I'll get to some principles that I do think are valuable that came from it. But again, looking back at who I was when I was 25, I was not risking a whole lot. Like there was not much downside.
That was a conclusion I came to too.
It's not like I was like selling my cars and like moving into a tiny studio apartment with like no furniture. It's like I didn't have anything to begin with, so of course it was easy to like give everything away. As I got older, I met my wife. I settled down. I started developing a career. I started taking my writing way more seriously, which meant that like, okay, I actually want to have a comfortable office chair. I want to have a desk with like stuff on it that I like. I want to have pictures on the wall of like things that make me happy because I'm going to spend 10 hours a day in this room, like staring at this wall. So might as well be something really nice on it. You start seeing the reason why you like certain possessions are nice to have, like they add value to your life. That said, the principle that I try to hold from the minimalism days that I do think is true is that owning a possession is not always a net positive. Like I think our parents' generation and like earlier generations that grew up with very little, it was just kind of implicit that like owning something is going to add value to your life. Whereas I think we were the first generation that had the experience of like recognizing that like just because you own something doesn't mean it's a net positive. It can actually make your life more difficult than not. So I try to remember that, and I try to really ask myself, before any major purchase or, when accumulating junk, I just try to like, do I really need this? Is this adding anything to my life? The Marie Kondo blew up 10 years ago.
Right.
She had this great phrase, which she said, like, does it bring joy? Great question. Like, you should ask that about everything in your life. And if it doesn't bring joy, you should probably consider getting rid of it, because the core principle of minimalism, that owning less gives you more freedom and alleviates stress, I do think is true ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's tons of benefits from minimalism as well. You get a few that I've come across and came up with: cognitive clarity, cluttered environment. Your brain's all over the place. Decision fatigue.
Yep.
There was a classic. So this was like early 2010s, the CEOs who wore the same thing every day, that was touted. Obviously the financial benefits, you're going to save money.
Totally.
You have more time and freedom. Sure. You have less maintenance of things and stuff like that. Mental health benefits, where you just don't, some people anyway, like you already mentioned, don't just have a relief when they don't have all these things.
Lack of paradox of choice, I would say.
Lack of paradox of choice, that goes definitely goes with the decision fatigue type bucket. It's just less wasteful too.
That too.
Yesterday we're talking about, the studio's kind of a mess right now, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking about getting rid of something, and our social media manager, Jess, she said, "You Americans," she's Australian, so in her cute little Australian accent, she said, "You Americans just always throwing shit away." And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. We're a throwaway society at this point.
Totally.
So there's all those benefits, sure. Some of the downsides I came up with though as well. You can take it like anything, you can get way too far into it. Like the stress of minimalism, like, oh my God, I have 10 things and I swore I was only going to have, 9 or whatever it is. So there's that. There was also, and I think I fell into this trap, that minimalism equals happiness. So like, well, if possessions don't make you happy, then no possessions will make you happy, right? And that's just a false dichotomy that comes to bear. And you already mentioned too, minimalism as a status symbol too.
Yes.
That can get to be like, oh, look how few things I can own.
Yeah.
Becomes a status symbol. Or it can even turn into, the things I own need to be, really good quality, whatever. And you end up spending $300 on a plain white t-shirt or something like that. Like, come on, guys, right? Yeah. And there's times where more is better, right? Like you said, we were young 20-year-old stupid dudes, right? Yeah. If I was a parent, there's no way I would.
Oh, no way.
What are you? You can't argue for that. You can argue with intent that you need to be more intentional with the things you buy your kids, the toys, the clothes, all of that. Sure. But, hobbyists too, they get a lot of joy out of things they make or whatever. And they need lots of like tools. Like my wood shop has tons of tools in it now.
Right.
Collectors, just people who like just having things too. Is there anything inherently wrong with that? I don't think so. It goes back to the joy thing and Marie Kondo thing.
I buy books compulsively. Like
now I do too.
Yeah. I like, for every book I read, I like own probably 5. I
love books too. Physical books.
I have a beautiful librody. It's awesome. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, I think minimalism is probably a little bit of a misnomer. Like what it should have been called is just anti-consumerism. It's just like, don't just buy shit compulsively. Yeah. Don't buy shit that you don't need. Don't buy shit for stupid status reasons.
Right.
Be conscious of what you're purchasing. Be conscious of what you own. Make sure it's adding value to your life and not detracting it. And do your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But beyond like the loss aversion and the maintenance costs and all of that, I think there's even kind of more insidious attachments that we have to our things. And you mentioned in the article again, the identity investment. When you start attaching your identity to your possessions, that can be a big problem too, right? Like, and you said,
or if you attach your identity to the lack of possessions.
Gotcha,
25-year-old Mark, you fucking punk.
We were definitely not thinking about that, because that was for me.
That was it.
I prided myself. I lived out of 2 bags for 2 years.
Yep.
And I didn't own a car.
Yep.
The one thing I left my guitar like at my friend's house, and like everything else That was and I went around telling them I was an evangelist.
Badge of honor.
Evangelist, yes, very much
I
so.
live out of a suitcase.
I thought everybody should live this way.
Yeah.
And And I got so attached to that identity. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. It's the same thing as a person whose like entire identity is his car.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Same shit.
Yeah. You did mention though, okay, the sentimentality around some objects and stuff like this. This is one I've come around on quite a bit too. My grandmother is a very sentimental person around objects, especially. And I just never understood it until recently. I think I started getting a little older too. And what I realized is that she connects those objects to a person or a place or a time or something like that. And I realized it because when my grandfather passed away, her husband, my grandpa passed away, she gave me some of his clamps and I use them in my shop sometimes. And every time I pull those out, I think about my grandpa now. And I'm like, they're not great clamps. They're not fancy, expensive ones or anything like that. But I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I love those fucking clamps. And same, I got a set of chisels from one of my uncles who passed away too. And they're crappy little chisels, but I think about him every time I pull those out, you know?
Yeah, totally.
That to me is like, oh, okay, I get that now. That is not like you're not attaching your identity to something, but there's like this little story around it that you can connect to emotionally and remember people and honor them in a way that's like, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. It's the attachments to relationships. It's also attachments to a certain period of your life. It's interesting. Next week we have Randy Blythe on, who is the lead singer of one of my favorite bands ever. And it's interesting because one of the first times I hung out with him, I was backstage with him at one of his shows, and I got into this very philosophical conversation with him about like, what is fandom? Like, why are you a fan of somebody or something, of like art or whatever? And as we were talking, I told him, I was like, you know what's funny? Like your band, when I was in college, your band is like the soundtrack to my university experience. And he like immediately was like, that's it. That's it. And I was like, don't get me wrong. Like I like all the stuff you guys have done since, but like there's like a 4-year period in my life that you were like the sound. If my life was a movie, you were the soundtrack during those scenes. And it's like, there is just this emotional attachment that is there. The same way I'd be emotionally attached to like, a stuffed dog I grew up with, or a dish that my grandmother used to make, and it is super fascinating, that emotional attachment that we develop at certain times and with certain people in certain places. That's the value of an object, right? Yeah. That is other than the utility, right? Like that is what makes it valuable.
Yeah. I had a very similar experience. Recently I dug up an old playlist that I made.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. When I was living in Chile, and it took me straight back. I'm walking through the streets of Santiago while I'm listening to this.
Dude, is there nothing better than like rediscovering music that you loved like 10 or 15 years ago and then forgot about?
Yeah. And it transports you right
exactly.
back.
It takes you right back.
It's insane. Yeah. No. And that's what that happened with music. That's happened with music with me before, or even like movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I didn't make that connection with physical objects for the longest time. And I think some people are more prone to do that than others. Yeah. Like my grandmother definitely is.
Sure.
But she also grew up with nothing too, so like the things in her life meant a lot. And I think that's another point we forget too, is that for some people, there is like a psychological security around their things. And if it doesn't get into your identity, I think that's okay too.
Well, I'll add this, is that some people really struggle with waste. And so my wife she also is very interested in kind of minimalist philosophies, but her inspiration is completely different. For me, it's like a very Buddhist, like I don't want to be attached to anything. Yeah. For her, she really struggles with wasting things.
That's my grandma too. Yeah.
Yeah. It tortures her.
Yeah.
And so for her, the cost of wasting an object is so high that like she thinks very, very, very hard before she gets something for that reason. Yeah. And it's funny because there have been times in our relationship where like for months I'll keep telling her, I'm like, we really need to get one of these things. And like, she's like, yeah, I know. And then like 6 months go by. I'm like, why have we not people this thing yet? And she's like, well, I don't want to get the wrong one. And then we have to throw it out or like sell it. And I'm just like, just buy the fucking thing.
Right.
So some people really struggle with the idea that like they have not taken full advantage of, what they've spent their money on. And then that kind of tortures them. And so then they would rather just not buy it at all.
Right. Yeah. And there's, this is somewhat related, I guess. There's this minimalist principle. Some people call it the 10-10 rule, or there's a 20-20 rule.
Mm-hmm.
If it can be replaced for $20 within 20 minutes, just get rid of it now.
Yeah.
That's a very wasteful mindset though, too, if you think about it. It's like, well, are we,
I mean, now we're getting into like sub philosophies of minimalism, because there is kind of a minimal. There's like the sustainability minimalism, and then there's the I guess like the ego attachment minimalism, which I was always the latter.
Yeah, same.
I would throw stuff away all the time.
No, same for sure.
I'm very American.
No, that's my dad always said this growing up. It's like we've transferred from a fix-it society to a throwaway society. Yeah. And I think that's where we need to get. You do need to be more intentional around what you own for all sorts of reasons. And that's one of them. We can, like, being so wasteful. They say something like if everybody on the planet lived like Americans, we'd need like 20 planets or something like that. And if it was the equivalent in France, we'd need like 6, or something like that. It's insane. So there is that argument around it, which I totally get and buy into.
We'll be right back. All right, we're back. What is the listener question of the day?
Yes, this one comes from Tyler, not Tyler Durden, but just Tyler.
Okay.
This is an interesting one, and it actually came up in a recent episode, so I like this one. Is it okay for an agnostic person to go to church with the intent to learn and socialize if they do not intend to convert? Being respectful applies throughout. So he puts that condition on. I really like this question.
Oh, okay. I feel like this question came up because of the Arthur Brooks episode.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've been thinking about this ever since that episode. And it was funny too, because I saw we got some comments who like kind of trashed him for trying to convert me.
Yeah, right. Which I didn't feel like he was trying to convert you, but I mean,
it was good. I mean, he was very respectful, but there was definitely like some like nudges. I mean, I kind of called him out on it. But,
yes, you did. But, and there was one you said in there, something along the lines. You said, like, as an atheist, I could argue God is not real. And he said, and you could be right.
Yes.
Which I thought was, okay. Even he's a devout Catholic and he acknowledges doubt as part of faith and all of that.
I did not think he crossed any lines, but it was funny because he was definitely kind of like nudging, like, hey, you should go to church, go see what it's about.
He recommended that to people. He's like, go. And he's like, people will, they'll engage you for the most part. You will run into zealots and assholes just like you will anywhere.
Yeah, pick the right church for sure.
What do you think about this as I don't know the context. It's a short question, and he doesn't give a whole lot of context. He just wants to learn and socialize, is what he says.
I think if you've never been exposed to Christianity or church, I think it's a great exercise. I would definitely recommend it to anybody who's curious to do it at least once. Just go see what it's about. See what a church service is like. See what they talk about. Listen to the Bible verses.
It could be temple or synagogue or whatever. Yeah.
Actually, one of my favorite things that I did, I had a really cool youth group leader when I was a teenager. Great guy. And one of the things he did for us is we took I think there was a month, and it was every Sunday we went to a different religious service. So we went to a Jewish temple one week, and then we went to like a mosque one week, and then we went to I think we went to like a Mormon church one week, and it was really cool. Like and like he had called ahead of time. He was like, hey, I'm just going to bring a bunch of these like Christian kids, and it's just to learn about your religion and just like be exposed to the different beliefs. It was really cool. It was like very, it was awesome. And so I think just from a purely like educational perspective and empathetic perspective of like learning and understanding different types of people and different philosophies and religions, like I think it's a great exercise. Should you go regularly and try to become part of that community while being atheist or agnostic? Right. I don't know. That's the question I struggle with. Okay. It's actually funny because I actually live 2 blocks from a church. And since my wife and I moved here, we like make jokes that we're going to like, oh, it's Sunday morning, time to go to church. Like we'll walk past to like go get our breakfast or something. We're like, oh, we should stop in and go to church. And, we kind of like laugh about it. But it's like after the Arthur Brooks episode, I had a conversation with her. I was like, maybe we should go sit in church. I don't know. Like it is, I do agree with him that like you and I, we've done so many episodes on the loneliness epidemic, on the atomization of society, how people are like, seem to be getting worse at maintaining community and relationships. And like, that is such a huge problem. It's a problem that I experienced in my own life. And I can't help but look at it and just see a church-size hole in society. Yeah. Like that, it's just all this stuff, like church was kind of and not just church, but religion in general. It was like the binding force that like solved all these problems. And so I lament that. And I mentioned on that episode, like I think back to my parents' church community when I was a kid, and you know, as an adult now, I remember it with envy. Like I'm like, man, I wish I had a group of friends like that I got to see every Sunday and do all these cool things with, and that I could rely upon, and that would show up, you know, at all times, all hours, and pitch in and help with whatever was needed. I get the draw. I'm just very, very skeptical that you can synthetically recreate that without the buy-in to the Jesus stuff.
Right.
And also to try to embed myself or oneself into that community without that buy-in on some level feels disrespectful.
Right. But and so like initially, I think the question is like initially going to learn and socialize. Yeah. Sure. That's okay.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about this question though, is it's somebody who's intentionally putting themselves in a situation with people that they disagree with. And I think like a lot of the comments we got to the Arthur is a polarizing episode. It did really well. Like the people who liked it, loved it. The people who didn't had a lot to say about it. And it kind of shows you how uncomfortable people are sitting with ideas that they disagree with and don't want to engage with. And I commend Tyler here for just being so proactive about being like, I'm going to go see what this is all about.
Go check it out.
Go check it out. Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, there was this period, probably like 15 years ago, you know, in the late 2000s, early 2010s, where there was kind of this virulent atheism. You know, it was like Sam Harris was bursting onto the scene, Dawkins, and Dawkins was doing his thing, and Hitchens was still alive, and it became very fashionable to be not militant atheist, but like uncompromisingly atheist. Because before that, atheists were just kind of chill. They were just like, yeah, just don't make me go to church.
Right.
But then in the 2000s, it became like kind of like not only am I atheist, but I think religion is bad. And that never sat right with me as somebody who grew up in a religious community. Just because I've seen firsthand how beneficial it is to so many people's lives. And again, from the community aspect, the social aspect, the emotional support aspect. So I think for people who have never been exposed to a religious community, it's probably a useful exercise to go check one out, see what it's all about, see what the people are like. Chances are, unless you find a real shitty denomination with a bunch of assholes, chances are you're going to meet the nicest people of your fucking life. You're going to be blown away by how friendly they are.
Right.
And that's something that gets missed, I think, a lot in the secular side of society.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to be sure, there are downsides and there's assholes, and the dogma can, get in and hook its claws into you and stuff like that. And sure, there's that side of it. That can happen without religion too.
Totally.
You know, you see these political movements now, which are basically, like you talked with Arthur Brooks, they're basically religious movements now. And we see the fallout from that. And that's what we're trying to replace, this church-sized hole that you talk about. We're replacing it with things that could be scarier. And Tim Urban said that too. And there's another polarizing episode there too. Tim Urban said that too. It was like, there's a lot about religion he doesn't like, and he's agnostic atheist as well. But he's like, what are you replacing that with?
Right.
Because it could be a lot worse than what we've done for the last 2,000 years or more, actually. So, to be curious, and you don't have to. You're sure you don't have to sign up. You don't have to drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
I don't think it's such a bad idea either.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about like Unitarians or like these? Do you think anything like a almost pseudo religion could replace that? You have already kind of noticed that or mentioned that. Probably not.
You know, there's a theory, and they've actually found this in the research, that is basically like the more strict the belief system of a movement, the more binding it is, like the stronger the community is.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And the more resilient the community is, because there's just a higher bar to entry, and then there's more, you lose more by failing, and everybody's behavior is kept in check through accountability. I don't know. I think there's some threshold of like, you need to buy into something that's like hard to buy into, right? Like you can't just show up and be like, well, maybe we believe the same thing, maybe we don't, but it doesn't matter because we're all just here to hang out. Like no group based on that ever lasts or sticks around. Like it's when people have skin in the game by believing something that is potentially embarrassing or punishing in some way.
Sets them apart, right?
That sets them apart. Like that's also the glue that binds them together, right? And then that's where you get the benefits, all the social and emotional benefits of like having a community and relying on each other. And so I don't think you can recreate it. I think it's interesting because I think a lot of there's a lot of I guess secular organizations that are like behaving more like religions, right? Like if you think about things like CrossFit or yoga studios or like veganism, you know, the effective altruism, like there's all these secular movements that are like are being like religious
adjacent,
and it doesn't really work. It doesn't really work. It's funny. You kind of get the worst aspects of religion, which is like you get the zealotry and the judgment, but you don't get the good aspects. You don't get the community and the reliance and all the good vibes and stuff. So
it's herding cats a lot of times. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe we should create a religion, Drew. We'll call it Bernieism.
You tried to do that in an artitle a long time ago. Remember that? And
I love that article.
I know you did. And a lot of people did. And I was like, I don't know.
You hated it.
This wasn't mine.
Honestly, that was not my best article. A lot of people did not like that article.
Well, okay.
All right. What's the?
I got some wisdom of the week for you.
Yeah. Guys. What's the quote?
This it's going back to the self-help stuff and the self-acceptance. The great Carl Rogers, the humanist psychologist, he said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change.
Mic drop moment. All right. We'll be back next week, folks. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck podcast is produced by Drew Burney. It's edited by Andrew Nishimura. Jessica Choi is our videographer and sound engineer. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.